Well, for more on this, let's bring in mobile application expert Alex Moazed. He's the founder and CEO of Applico. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, first, help us clarify the difference between car sharing and ride sharing, because sometimes people get a little bit confused.
Yeah, so car sharing is where you need a car for an extended period of time beyond just one single ride. Where in a ride sharing model, like with Didi, you're going to have a driver drive you around. Car sharing, you're going to be driving yourself.
Now, give us an idea of just how big the car sharing market is right now in China.
So there are probably somewhere around 40 different car sharing startups in China itself, many of whom have raised tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of RMB. Some of whom have actually raised over $100 million or close to a billion RMB.
Now, what are some of the factors that are really driving this demand that we're seeing for car sharing in China?
I think if you look at just the huge demand in the Chinese market for transportation, that trend is only increasing as time goes on. And there's a lot of latent availability. There are a lot of people with cars who are not always using their cars and would like some extra money. And that really fuels the peer-to-peer car sharing part of the market. And then there is the other side of the market with your Go funds and your car-to-goes, where they have cars parked on the road and you can hop in them, kind of like Zipcar, which started in the 90s in the US. So there are really these two different approaches to it, but all of it is derived from the customer, and the customer wants new, innovative ways to solve their transportation needs.
Now, you mentioned the number of startups coming into this space, and it does seem that when there's a bright idea in the sharing economy, it gets very crowded very quickly. So how likely are we to see an investment bubble when it comes to car sharing?
I think if you look at the two leading car sharing peer-to-peer platforms in China, that's PP Zuchi and AT Zuchi. I may be mispronouncing them, but each of them have raised about 150 million USD and 150 million and 100 million respectively. They have been in the market for a few years now. I think if you just look at the volume of car sharing platforms in the space, we are bound to have consolidation. The platform business model has a winner-take-all dynamic, which means that there are only one or two winners in any given industry. We saw Didi take out Uber in the Chinese market, and before that, Didi also had their merger to become the largest ride-sharing platform ahead of Uber. And with that merger, they were able to raise a lot more capital. So consolidation is inevitable, but if you look at those two leading car-sharing platforms, I wouldn't necessarily say that the money they've raised and the valuations that they are getting are extremely out of proportion. I would not say that.
So given that return on investment, how are consumers reacting to this growing number of car sharing services, say, versus the other alternatives?
The good thing is that there are a variety of alternatives. There are the peer-to-peer, there's the car-to-go and GoFund models. There's also bike sharing, which we've obviously heard a lot about in recent time. There's obviously ride sharing. So there are a myriad of different transportation options for customers, but to have a need to have a car and have it over an extended period of time, that need isn't going to go anywhere. It's only going to increase. And that's the niche. That's a niche that these companies can satisfy, but that's also a very large niche.
Now, sometimes when you have these new innovations, it can be hard for regulators to keep up. So how might the Chinese government's regulations affect this industry's growth?
Well, a great deal. I think some of the regulation that they have proposed putting into place around insurance and payment structures and things like that make a lot of sense. I think if you look at wanting to reduce congestion, your peer-to-peer car sharing platforms will do a better job at that than your GoFund, your car-to-go models. Peer-to-peer is using existing inventory. I own a car, I'm putting it into the marketplace when I'm not using it. That car is going to have a parking spot regardless, right? The GoFund, the car-to-go, is adding new inventory, new cars to the market, to any city. So net, you will get a better reduction in congestion, both for parking and just additional cars on the road with your peer-to-peer car sharing platforms versus your Zipcar, GoFund, car-to-go model.
Now, we know that this is one way to really cut down on some of the pollution, but how are automakers reacting to this idea of more people sharing versus buying?
I think automakers are always looking to stay on the cutting edge. The entire automotive industry over the next 10 years is going to go through a pretty enormous transformation, especially as autonomy arrives. And autonomy will really fundamentally change the business model for automakers. Car sharing platforms and electric vehicles and these kinds of things will serve different customer demand segments and different customer needs. But the fundamental rejigging of the automaker business model will come when autonomy is really here.
That's certainly the road ahead. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Alex Moazed, founder and CEO of Applico.